Good afternoon from Washington. Good evening to those in Europe, and a special welcome for those who are up past midnight in the South Caucasus for this program. My name is Damon Wilson. I'm Executive Vice President of the Atlantic Council, and you've joined us today for a very important conversation. We're looking forward to a back and forth conversation with the Foreign Minister of Armenia, Zohrab Mnatsakanyan. We're really delighted to welcome him to Washington, although not under these circumstances. It was a year ago, just over a year ago, that the Atlantic Council, Ambassador Herbst, who will be moderating this conversation, and I led an Atlantic Council delegation to Yerevan, where we had a chance to sit down with the minister there. Now he's in Washington after weeks, nearly a month of fighting in Nagorno-Karabakh and casualties that continue to play out even today. The minister is here in Washington at the invitation of Secretary Pompeo, along with his counterpart from Azerbaijan. They've had talks today, which we'll be able to ask the minister about. We're looking forward for this conversation at a critical time to hear the minister's insights, perspectives, and the prospects for a peaceful resolution to the fighting that we have seen even intensify today. I want to welcome all of you who are watching this show and encourage you to join on social media using the hashtag #ACEurasia to send in your comments and your questions. I also want to underscore that we've extended the same invitation to the Minister of Azerbaijan, who we hope to host in a comparable discussion. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ambassador John Herbst, the Director of the Atlantic Council Eurasia Center. Over to you, Ambassador Herbst.
Thank you, Damon. And thank you, Mr. Minister, for joining us today. It's a difficult time, and we have just the right guest to talk about this. Minister Mnatsakanyan is a long-term distinguished Armenian diplomat. He was formerly the Armenian representative at the UN, at the OSCE, Deputy Foreign Minister, and now Minister of Foreign Affairs. So, Mr. Minister, over to you. I understand you want to make some brief remarks.
Well, thank you very much for hosting me here. It is a visit to Washington at a very critical time for Armenia, for Nagorno-Karabakh, for our people in Nagorno-Karabakh. As you know, on the 27th of September, there was an aggression unleashed against our compatriots, the people of Nagorno-Karabakh, with a massive attack on across the entire line of contact from south to north, with the heavy use of all kinds of weaponry, aviation, heavy artillery, tanks, UAVs, drones, infantry. This was an affront to what we have been underlining throughout this entire time, so far as the question of the resolution of Nagorno-Karabakh is concerned, that at the heart of the problem is the very physical security of our compatriots, the very physical existence of our compatriots. And we have been emphasizing that very clearly, that we are dealing with existential threat. We have seen this happening before. It shouldn't happen again. It will not happen again. Therefore, the question of status of Nagorno-Karabakh has been at the heart of our approach. Now, we see these concerns in manifestation in full. Our compatriots, our civilians are under threat. They are pounded with all those heavy weapons, missiles, rockets, and drones. There is a huge pressure on the civilian population. There is huge destruction. There is death among the civilians. There is a heavy toll on the military. And this only emphasizes that the question of security is at the heart of this conflict, at the heart of the problem, and that there is no way that the security of our compatriots will be compromised. There is no way we're going to allow another ethnic cleansing in Nagorno-Karabakh, another threat to the physical existence of our compatriots. This is what the whole conflict is about. Okay. We are in Washington now as in manifestation of the very important good work that is done by the OSCE Minsk Group co-chairs, the internationally mandated format within which the peaceful resolution is taking place. And now we are here to work with our American partners, who are very consolidated with France and the United States in promoting the the agenda of peaceful resolution, and we had very productive meetings in the morning. We will continue our work together on finding the way in which we pursue very specific, very important objectives: establishing the ceasefire, going back to the peaceful resolution. The co-chairs have been more than explicit about the need to stop the hostilities, stop the fighting, establish ceasefire without preconditions. This was done at the level of the presidents on the 1st of October. The presidents of the United States, the president of France, and the president of the Russian Federation. This was repeated by the foreign ministers of the co-chair countries, France, United States, and Russia again. There were individual attempts, very hands-on attempts by the president of the Russian Federation. Subsequently, we had long negotiations in Moscow, which delivered the joint statement of the 10th of October, which was very important in establishing ceasefire, but was not respected by Azerbaijan. Then subsequently, the president of France has been taking a very important effort in aimed at establishing the ceasefire. Again, we had an important statement jointly on the 17th of October, which was again not respected. On all these occasions, the Armenian sides have been fully supportive of the approach and the objective of establishing ceasefire. However, we have a situation in which Azerbaijan has been showing the audacity and capacity to ignore the calls of the international community and to continue with this aggression. What is specific about this conflict is that this is not just an aggression of Azerbaijan. In fact, our compatriots in Nagorno-Karabakh are fighting three enemies at the same time, three adversaries at the same time, because there is a direct involvement of Turkey in this. There is a direct presence of foreign terrorist fighters fighting against Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh, and there is Azerbaijan. So the three adversaries fighting our compatriots is only compounding, only exacerbating the conflict and the crisis that has been that's been brought about by this aggression on the starting on the 27th of September.
Okay, thank you. What can you tell us about your talks with Secretary Pompeo, and what do you want from the United States?
As I'm saying, with Secretary Pompeo and with all our other colleagues, friends in the State Department and beyond, we have been assessing the way in which we can immediately, without delay, achieve the establishment of ceasefire and go back to the peaceful resolution. I think what we have been hearing from the United States was very encouraging. And again, what is very, very important, that the US efforts are very much in consolidation of the joint combined work of the OSCE Minsk Group co-chairs, France, Russia, and the United States. This is one of the formats in which these three countries have been considerably united in their effort and considerably coordinated and consolidated as a single co-chairmanship of three countries, and that remains the single, effective format within which the resolution of the conflict is sought.
All right. Your point about the co-chairs, I think, is an important one. As someone who's been very involved following U.S.-Russian relations, we seem to see some coincidence of interest between Washington and Moscow. And the fact that you have the Russian co-chair here along with his French colleague is important. Is there anything more you might want to say about this, how this raises the prospects for some sort of diplomatic breakthrough?
This consolidation is very important in that, the insistence on achieving ceasefire from all the three co-chairs individually and combined as a single co-chairmanship must deliver result, must stop this carnage, must stop this appalling situation that is happening on the ground, must stop the killing of the civilians, must stop all this pressure that is on our compatriots in Nagorno-Karabakh. So the difference is, this is exactly the format in which, despite the various disagreeing points of views amongst the co-chairs on many other issues in the international agenda, there has been a remarkable unity amongst the co-chairs. I think it's also our policy so far as Armenia is concerned. So far as Armenia is concerned, we are the sole guarantors of the security of Nagorno-Karabakh today. And this remains to be the case, and we will certainly be supporting and doing everything to make sure that the physical security of our compatriots is delivered. And here we have been recognizing the power of this consolidated co-chairmanship action. And in our policies, we have been very careful about making sure that this unity of the co-chairs remains intact. And in our policies, we have been doing everything to make sure that we do not have anything on our part to allow such, a pressure on that unity. And that we very much appreciate what we have with the co-chairs.
Okay, you've eloquently stated your case, but you do have, I think, a problem. The co-chairs, the three co-chairs, and for that matter, almost the entire world recognizes the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan, which includes Nagorno-Karabakh. So how do you deal with that?
Look, the way in which you put that question is what we have now. Okay. And what we have now also is the peaceful resolution of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, which is based on the three fundamental principles of which one is the right to self-determination. The right to self-determination in the case of Nagorno-Karabakh is stated so that there will be such situation in which their free expression, recognized by the international community, free expression of will of their population, the way in which they will be defining and deciding their fate as a unit which is organized in a way that it can take care of its affairs as a full-fledged member of the international community, is one of the fundamental principles in the peaceful resolution. That principle doesn't imply that there is limitation to the exercise of the right to self-determination. Now, when it comes to Nagorno-Karabakh, it's particularly sensitive in that what we have now only emphasizes our concerns that have been on the table for all this time. That we are dealing with basically the physical security of our compatriots. Any jurisdiction of Azerbaijan over Nagorno-Karabakh means a license to conduct those appalling policies which are bordering ethnic cleansing, the demonization of the Armenians, the glorification of those who hate Armenians. The policies of Azerbaijan have been such that there have been no room to consider any such situation in which the international community can give license to Azerbaijan to endanger the lives of our compatriots. Especially now when we're witnessing what is happening to our civilians, what is happening to our compatriots in Nagorno-Karabakh.
I think it's safe to say that the international community is united behind the physical security of your compatriots in Azerbaijan. But some observers say that one of the reasons, or perhaps one of the reasons why Azerbaijan has taken this military action is that they saw zero flexibility on the Armenian side in recent years, including after Prime Minister Pashinyan came to power. So what would you say to those observers?
To those observers, I will say one thing. We have been dealing exactly with a situation in which, while the Armenian side has been emphasizing the importance of a balanced, compromise-based solution in which we find such, measurable balance that the interests of the parties are fully met. Compromise-based. However, we have been dealing with a totally different situation. We have been dealing with a maximalist position of Azerbaijan. Maximalist position who was seeing its interests overwhelming and who was ignoring those concerns, those interests which have been emphasized by the Armenian sides, Nagorno-Karabakh and Armenia. So I will not take that point. The position of Armenia has been quite consistent. Balanced, compromise-based solution to meet the concerns and the interests of all the parties, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Nagorno-Karabakh. That has been the consistent position. Then certain things have been taken out of context, twisted, and used for the propaganda by the Azerbaijani side, in which they were trying to shift the focus from their maximalist position on to the Armenian side. That is not something that we agree with.
Okay. You've expressed your concern, which is understandable, about shelling from the Azerbaijani side on Stepanakert, on Martakert, and other places. But Azerbaijan has talked about shelling from Nagorno-Karabakh, from Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh, of Terter, Agdam. And of course, you had the incident a week or so ago, the shelling of Ganja. So what do you say to that?
I would say that conflict is a bad thing, that every tragedy is lamentable, that this has to stop. But what we are dealing with, again, from 27th of October, consistently, the towns and villages of Nagorno-Karabakh are under consistent attack, pounded by drones, by missiles, by aviation bombing. Consistently, there is about 90,000 people today displaced. They lost their homes, they lost their property. Infrastructure is destroyed. People live in the shelters. Day after day after day. This is consistent. This is what is happening in Nagorno-Karabakh. This is what is happening to the people in Nagorno-Karabakh.
Okay.
So over 8,000, 8,000 infrastructure and property has been destroyed so far. There are many civilian casualties. There are many wounded. Hospitals are bombed. Schools are bombed. Day after day. This has to stop.
All right. I would agree with you that the outside power playing the largest role to this point in the conflict is Turkey. Traditionally, Russia has played a very large role in the South Caucasus. Mr. Putin, in recent days, has said, on the one hand, that this conflict really began with assault on Armenians back at the time the Soviet Union imploded. But he also said that he has a good relationship with Erdogan. They don't agree on the South Caucasus conflict. Erdogan is a pragmatic politician with whom he gets along. So your assessment of those statements and more broadly of Moscow's position?
Well, so far as Moscow's position is concerned, as I'm saying, we have been engaged very heavily since 27th, very heavily with Moscow as much as with Paris and with Washington. What we appreciate very much is this very well-coordinated work of Russia together with France and the United States as co-chairs, with the aim and the purpose and the responsibility to stop the fighting first, to stop this carnage, and to move to the negotiating process. Exactly the opposite of what Turkey was doing. And the aggression has been visible already months before, when they started under the cover of the military drills they were conducting between with Azerbaijan, Turkey and Azerbaijan. The transfer of military equipment, the transfer of the instructors, the recruitment and transfer of those terrorist fighters from the parts of Syria and Libya have been indicating that Turkey's destabilizing aggressive policies that they have been conducting in the East Mediterranean, in North Africa, in the Middle East, every intention to export those destabilizing policies, those aggressive policies to the South Caucasus have already been visible. And the encouragement, the political and military encouragement for Azerbaijan to entertain the thought that there is a military solution to this conflict has been the role of Turkey.
Okay. As you might expect, there's a great deal of interest in our event and lots of questions. And I know your time is valuable, so I'm going to now turn to questions that are coming into me online. From Ambassador Richard Hoagland, I'll put two to you because they're similar. They address the same topic. One from Ambassador Dick Hoagland, quote, would Armenia accept the OSCE Madrid principles if Azerbaijan also accepts them? And then a related question from Mary F. In the case of the return to the negotiations table, what would you offer the Azerbaijanis in order to calm things down and, as she puts it, to achieve a final settlement?
Okay, so the first question is about the principles.
Right.
Very good. Now, and Madrid principles, you mentioned.
Yes,
Right.
Madrid OSCE
Madrid
principles.
principle. Okay, if we talk about the basic principles in which we have the principle of the non-use of force or threat of force, the principle of territorial integrity, the principle of the right to self-determination, that has always been there. On the basis of these principles, the various packages have been worked out. Now, there is a very clear question so far as Armenia is concerned. There was Kazan in 2011. It was not Armenia or the Armenian sides who rejected Kazan. It was the Azerbaijani side who rejected the Kazan. There was a perfect solution, a perfect opportunity for Azerbaijan to show that they are ready to move in the direction of a compromise, move in the direction of a solution. They ditched Kazan. Before that, they ditched other things. They ditched Key West in 2001. So when it comes to the question of compromise and principles, we have shown our colors. We need to continue working on this. Now, the second question is exactly sort of as a follow-up to the first
Right.
question. What is there to solve the problem? What we have on our side is that the question of status, the question of securing solid security arrangement for our compatriots in Nagorno-Karabakh against the threats as we are witnessing them now, the threats of physical existence, the threat of ethnic cleansing. That is what we are seeking. The way in which we will be achieving this, so far as this conflict is concerned, so this conflict is now happening, it's only emphasizing that we need to find a way in which the security is fully there. And that is the question of status. That is the question in which any claim of jurisdiction is basically a license to endanger the lives of our people. We cannot see the lives of our people endangered again.
You've been very clear about the importance of protecting the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. We have a question from Halima Miha, who says the following. According to the 2015 census, there are, actually you validated too, there are over 145,000 Armenians in Karabakh. But at the time of the conflict in the early 90s, there were 800,000 Azerbaijanis there. And of course, they are no longer there. So she asked, what about the rights of those who are the Azerbaijanis who were pushed out of NK?
Nagorno-Karabakh was transferred to Azerbaijan by way of ruling of the Bolshevik powers back in the 20s. Over the years of jurisdiction over Nagorno-Karabakh, there was a policy of quiet discrimination that the world didn't know, because it was in a country, in a place where not everything was known to the outside world. The population of Nagorno-Karabakh, the figure was, I didn't quite hear the figure, but the known proportion was 75-25 or a bit more or less there, right?
Okay.
Right? Okay. So we need, let's be very clear about this. What was happening in the 70 years subsequently, especially after 88, subsequently in the 1990s, and there is another good reminder about the situation today, that at a point in the 1990s, at some point between 92 and 93, where the situation, when Nagorno-Karabakh might have been totally, non-existent today as we know it today, because a good part of Nagorno-Karabakh was taken control of by Azerbaijan, by force. A good part of the Armenian population of Nagorno-Karabakh has been driven out of their land, ethnically cleansed, driven out of their land. There was a successful defense, and we have the Nagorno-Karabakh today. So this subsequently, the policies of Azerbaijan to to promote this hatred, to promote this intolerance, to promote this discrimination, this racism towards Armenians, has been the very wrong thing to do. How are they persuading Armenians to be part of this land, of their land, when of their territory, when they have been so consistent in hating Armenians? Now, I'm coming exactly to that point raised by one of the participants, that the question of an environment within which we can seek peace is very critical. That we have to stop this hatred. We have to stop this discrimination. We have to start working in a different way for our communities to know each other. This is the wrong moment to say this, because there is a lot of suffering on the ground. My compatriots will not understand me when they are now sitting in the shelters and having the bones dropping on them. But for the Azerbaijanis to live in Nagorno-Karabakh, they have to learn, stop hating the Armenians. And so far as the status is concerned, I'm sure once we resolve the question of status, and once our compatriots in Nagorno-Karabakh live free, in dignity, in safety and in security, we will work together. We need to work together now and in the future, to work together to establish an environment when this stops, this hatred stops.
Okay. We have a question from Ambassador Rob Sakuta. He says, I agree wholeheartedly with the desire for an immediate ceasefire and return to negotiations, but is Armenia expecting any pullback by Azerbaijani forces from the regions around Nagorno-Karabakh that have been occupied since the 1990s? In other words, the gains they have made in recent weeks.
Let's do the ceasefire first.
So you're ready for ceasefire in
Let's do
place?
the ceasefire first. Let's stop the carnage. Let's stop the suffering of the civilians. That's the critical question.
Okay, that's I think an important observation on your part. Okay, we have a question from Austin Dochler, and excuse me, Austin, if I mispronounced your name. What's a realistic path forward for a negotiating ceasefire? Would it require Russia and Turkey acting as brokers and security guarantors?
Turkey has no role in this. Turkey is exactly part of the problem. So the question is, formulated in a way that there is no way.
I understand your point. All right. Well, would you see other powers, maybe the three co-chairs, forming?
That's exactly what is happening now. It is exactly the three co-chairs. Please, if we follow the developments, as I already mentioned, 1st of October, and it's not a small thing, when the presidents of France, Russia, and the United States put their names to a joint statement of the co-chair countries, presidents of the co-chair countries, to insist on ceasefire, immediate, unconditional ceasefire. When the foreign ministers of the three co-chair countries put their names to this insistence on an immediate ceasefire, but then subsequently they work towards the rather more precise parameters of establishing ceasefire, I think that is more than a clear manifestation of the way in which we need to achieve ceasefire. And I have absolutely no doubt that the co-chairs will continue to exert every effort, to invest every effort in achieving this. We are fully supported.
Okay. You're right that the three co-chairs have expressed a real interest in a ceasefire. We have a question from Vlad Lupin.
Whom I know very well.
Yes. Yes. In fact, he says, dear Zohrab,
Yes.
in the chat. I'll read the whole thing, but it replies precisely to this issue. The matter of self-determination in the UN is linked to peoples, unlike enclaves, and is more nuanced. But to avoid a debate on that, now Baku seems to feel they can establish a new status quo. Do you feel that there are physical guarantees that the major players would make sure of so that both sides would accept the ceasefire and allow for a breakthrough?
There are certain ways of establishing ceasefire and also securing ceasefire. And those are what we're discussing amongst the co-chairs and amongst ourselves. So yes, ceasefire has to be established and it has to be sustainable. And this is part of our talk now.
This may be a little bit too
Have I missed anything in that question?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay.
I think you covered it. Actually, but here's a follow-up, which is not in the question. Some people think that the guarantees ultimately require boots on the ground, peacekeepers on the ground. What do you think about that?
Peacekeepers on the ground is part of the story. Peacekeepers on the ground is the way in which we need to, consolidate or address any risks against the sustainability of ceasefire. And that has been part of the story for a very long time, about the way in which we're seeking the peaceful resolution. And now it is also part of the story. So this is very important. The peacekeeping question is exactly one of the critical questions in all our discussions and in all our approaches that have been before and that are now.
Okay. I don't really want to inject myself.
It's not just our approach.
Okay.
It's just the general approach that has been.
I have not so far really injected myself into this conversation, but I think here I've got to. An important question that arises if we're talking about peacekeepers is Russia. Russia has a habit of sending peacekeepers, I put that in parentheses, in quotation marks, into different parts of the former Soviet Union. But I think often their job is something other than peacekeeping. So what do you think about Russians as a part of the contingent?
I will react to you in a different way.
Okay.
We have been going out of our way to make sure that in the case of the OSCE Minsk Group co-chairmanship, we have a good deal of consolidation and unity amongst the co-chairs.
Okay.
Your question implies the rather different kind of, view of what is happening in other parts of the world and what is happening in relations of the co-chairs on many other matters.
Right.
What we are saying is that we have been good enough, and Armenia's policies have been consistent enough to make sure that so far as the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict is concerned, we sustain that important unity and consolidation. So we're not thinking in those terms. We're thinking in terms of delivering and establishing real sustainable. Previously it was the peace resolution, and in this particular case, real sustainable ceasefire. So our approaches are different. We ask different questions, to ourselves, and the priority, as I was saying, is not to draw this into sort of other situations, draw our thinking into other situations, but to assess the way in which it is best applicable to what we have in the case of Nagorno-Karabakh.
Okay. We have a question from former Assistant Secretary Alice Wells. She asked, energy diversification has been an important U.S. and regional objective. Do you see the rocket attacks on Ganja as partly aimed at targeting critical energy infrastructure?
Well, totally irrelevant question. Totally irrelevant. We can go in this direction and remind that, the Armenian nuclear power plant has been, there was a threat from Azerbaijan to target the Armenian nuclear power plant. And it is also in the context we have heard before about, those risks to the energy supplies and so on and so forth. Again, let's be very clear. The whole point about Nagorno-Karabakh is the protection of our compatriots. We're not a destabilizing force. Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh are not a destabilizing force. Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh are fighting for their physical existence. Okay. So that question to us is totally irrelevant.
Okay. We have a question from...
And we would very much encourage those who ask these questions to put a little bit more thought in what concerns us most. Our people are dying on the ground. This is what we think now. Our people are suffering now. And those questions are not really very interesting now.
Okay. David Gregorian asks, in a recent article published by the Washington Post, a proposal was made to establish a no-fly zone over the conflict area enforced by the co-chairs as a step towards establishing a ceasefire. How does Armenia react to this proposal?
I'm sorry, I was not quite clear.
A no-fly zone over the area where conflict is taking place. A no-fly zone which would be enforced by France, Russia, and the United States.
It is. I think it is now a no-fly zone. I mean, there are military airplanes, in fact, F-16s belonging to the Turkish Air Force, who are flying the area and also coordinating the drone attacks on the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh. if we're talking about no-fly zone in that context,
Yes.
let's talk about that.
In other words, you
Of
like
course, that
the
is part of
proposals, what you're saying.
part of the ceasefire that we need to establish. You know, the question is ceasefire. The parameters of ceasefire are very different, and we need now to first manifest political, decision to respect the agreements, respect what has been agreed on the 10th of October, respect what has been agreed on the 17th of October. Stop the ceasefire and then consolidate the ceasefire.
Okay. I'm seeing my minders, my superiors saying that your time is just about up.
Yeah,
So I have more questions, but I think we have to bow to your schedule. So thank you very much for coming. We have been trying very hard, and we hope to have Foreign Minister Bayramov of Azerbaijan here next week. We have a similar conversation. Not here, but I mean via Zoom. And again, we are grateful for your time and for your willingness to talk to us.
Thank you. It was a great privilege, and it was really a great pleasure to come back and see good friends, to reconnect. It was mentioned you were in Armenia just about a year ago, and I really very much appreciate the good cooperation, the good dialogue that exists with the Atlantic Council, and I look forward to
We hope to have you back here for a live audience, and we hope to see you in Yerevan.
Yes, we'll look forward to welcome you there. Thank you.